Hello Plant ID students, welcome to another week of class and another video with me, your TA Mary. This week I'm going to be showing you how to use your USB microscopes and then showing you some basics of plant dissection. Remember, we dissect plants, especially their flowers, and so we can see the traits that otherwise won't be visible with the naked eye, but that will be very important in identification. So before you get started, make sure you have a good, clean workspace. You want to organize all of your tools for these dissections. That being said, I'm using a kit that was meant for this class about 2 years ago. I think I have all of your same materials, but if there are slight differences, that's why. Let me know if I need to make any slight adjustments or clarifications to what I'm telling you here. So first off, you'll need some tools to manipulate your subjects, whether that's a probe or some tweezers. You can use whatever you like. I suggest a measuring tape. Now the pad that your USB microscope comes with does have a ruler, but if you want some more specific measurements, I'd use this. You will also need a scalpel. Now, I don't think I need to say this, but Lord have mercy, this is such a sharp blade on these scalpels. Please be extraordinarily careful when you are attaching these blades. But what you want to do is to slide the blade on to this metal prong into the groove on the center of it. Get a hang of it pretty easy. So slide that blade on at an angle, find that groove, and then push in until you hear a click, which I just heard. And now this blade is secure. Again, please don't do anything stupid with this. It's very sharp. Just always keep in mind where your blade is and what direction it's facing. One last thing, and this is a hand microscope. If you have particularly small flowers, it can be useful to start with this microscope. And I say that just because it can be a little useful to understand what you're looking at before you go into the high magnification of this USB microscope. It's going to kind of help you find what you're looking for, and the hand lens can help you do that. If you have one, they're useful. Now let's actually set up our microscope. Here is the stand it comes with. Honestly, I've been using this today and I haven't really found it that useful, but that's just my preference. You might find otherwise. It does have a pad where you can stick it on. Just push it on and then flip this little lever to engage its suction pad. And then here is my USB microscope. It's already plugged into my computer and working good. And it just attaches to your little arm, and ta-da, you have a working microscope. Now there are two adjustments you can make on this scope. The first is up top here. This is adjusting your light. If you're ever having issues, I turn the light all the way up to begin with, and you should see it. You should know if there's a problem with the light because this is seriously bright. Turn the light all the way up and then adjust from there. Sometimes people have a hard time seeing what they're supposed to be seeing just because they're not letting enough light in. And then second is the focus. And to focus your camera in and out, all you have to do is twist on this gray rubber part. One last note I want to make about these. On top is a picture of a camera, and this can take photos for you. All you have to do is just press the button. I will note, right now am recording on my camera. It's just basic camera app because I have to for this video. You can't use the little button on this app. You need to download their software, which, if you look at the quick start guide, they give you a link to that software and where you can download it. That little button will be very nice when you're trying to focus on something that might be hard to focus on. You can just tap the top there. Let's see. That's all I want to talk about here. Give me a second to put on some gloves. Here are some of the flowers that I will be dissecting today. I'm wearing gloves because of this flower right here. It comes from a tobacco plant, which when these flowers have been soaking in alcohol for so long, they can release a dangerous amount of nicotine. So for my own protection from this little fella, I'm wearing gloves. But let's start with this flower. So at one point in time, this was very colorful, but after years of being soaked in alcohol, pretty much leaches the color from them. Here we are. I don't know how well y'all can see that. This specimen has sepals. It's got 5 petals kind of fused together, and it has both style and a stigma and anthers. So right off the bat, we know that this is a complete, perfect / bisexual flower. And now, before we start dissecting it, we're going to destroy it, basically, dissecting it. And so you just want to be sure that you have all the photos and measurements you could possibly take before doing this. Just take every measurement you can think of, just to be sure that when you put this thing under the knife, you're not going to be losing any useful data. Let's go to the USB and see what this thing looks like. Now, for the purposes of this video, I want to focus on the reproductive structures, but while you have your specimen under the microscope, you should take note of all features of your specimen. So this here is actually the stem of the plant I was just showing you. So first off, we can notice a thorn. That is good to remember. If I were you, I'd be taking constant photos to make sure I'm documenting all this. And then these white structures, which you're seeing, they're very cool. They just coat the stem. And they're actually basically hair structures. They're called stellate trichomes. And so if you see that, definitely make a note, take some photos. It's just such a cool feature. The plant we were just looking at, it had 5 anthers, and here's one of them. Here's the tip. And this is what it looks like going down. When you have structures this big, it can be hard to get them all in focus at the same time. So you might want to take multiple photos of the same subject to make sure you're capturing all of its features. Next up, we have the style, is what you're looking at here. And if I can follow it down this way, there is the stigma, which it's hard to see many distinguishing features on this stigma. And one last thing I want to show you. This was a cross-section of the ovary, and it was really pretty, and then I smushed it. And so unfortunately, I can't show you this as an example because I smushed it. But let this be a reminder that it's good to take many, many samples. And so if you mess up on one, don't worry, you've got a backup. But what you're seeing right in the center of the screen there are all the little ovules. So I'll show you some nicer cross-sections of ovaries that I did not smush. Here is the stigma from another flower. It's kind of hard to see, but trust me when I say there are 3 lobes on this stigma. And so if you've watched all of the reproduction lecture videos, they'll be able to answer this question. So judging by those 3 lobes, how many carpels do you think this plant has? If you need another hint, here is the cross-section of this plant's ovary. I have a feeling you guessed 3, which correct. You can see these very clear divisions, those 3 divisions. And now I want to mention that when you make a cross-section of the ovary of a plant, I feel like it's very useful to first just pick away all the anthers and the petals by hand until you're left with just the ovary. And at that point, you cut into it like you would, I don't know, a sausage to make little sausage discs. What I'm saying is you don't want to go into it lengthwise. you want a nice cross-section to show all of those different locules. Let's take a look at this tobacco plant, which again is the reason why I'm wearing gloves. So here is just the tip of the style leading to the stigma, and here is the cross-section of the ovary. Too much light. Let me take that down a bit. There we go. Here is the cross-section of the ovary of that plant. Very, very cool. And if you haven't already guessed, how many locules are, or sorry, I should say carpels, how many carpels are there? 2. We know that both from the head, that stigma, and this clear division, this bilateral division, which kind of makes 2 separate little compartments in this plant. Here is another example. This is a cross-section of a bilateral flower, and right in the middle of your screen, that's where the ovary is. And I will say this is such a teeny little structure. It's very difficult to tell, but I'm not seeing any evidence of multiple carpels. And I want to point out that even if you're having a hard time making these cross sections, or you might get a flower that's just so tiny you can't really even do that in the first place, don't worry, all is not lost. There are plenty of traits that you can look at in flowers to identify them. So I just dropped a big hint earlier, and then I said that this flower had bilateral symmetry, especially if you saw these photos without magnification. You would know that they were giving you a dead giveaway that it was from a pea plant. Let's also look at this example here. So this is the gynecium of another flower, and I am pretty much zoomed in as far as I can be. It's got those really cool stigma, just the teeniest tiny little ovary. I will not be able to make a cross section of this without just smooshing it. But this structure here is still giving us a lot of information. So be sure to take some good photos and document what you can, even if you can't see every single structure. Now these USB scopes are really good for getting reproductive information about our flowers, but remember that's not all you're after. Here are some really cool hairs that I found on the interior of a petal of one of my flowers. Those are really cool. And even a small trait like that can really help you get far when it comes to identification. Okay, so that is all I want to talk with you about for this particular video. I'll leave you on these cool hairs. And remember, if you have any questions, I know that this can be difficult when you're having to make cross sections and figure out what you're looking at with a flower that you may never have seen before. It's okay. Just remember to email me any questions, concerns. If you need to gripe about your flowers, I understand. Enjoy your week.